Back again with another season preview with the chief football writer of The Age, Jake Nile. Jake, we'll have a look at the Kangaroos and a couple of decent additions to the Roos this year.
Well, yeah, and the biggest one, of course, is David Noble coming in as coach, and I think that was a very big appointment. Clubs tend to go with the opposite sort of profile of a coach when they have one. Rhys Shaw was very inexperienced and fresh. David Noble, a very seasoned hand, someone who's come to it very late, very much following the model of Chris Fagan. Someone he played at Fitzroy, of course, knows Paul Roos. Paul Roos is going to be another presence behind the scenes at North. He's involved, and he, of course, was instrumental in the decision to hire Noble as the senior coach. I think that appointment and those two people outweigh any of the players that they're bringing in.
So Noble's come and he's brought his own assistants as well. What can Roos fans expect from a David Noble-led team?
I think what they can expect is some consistency of effort. I think that's what should be asked, because I don't think North are going to win a lot of games this year. They've gone into a fairly big draft position rather than trades. They brought in Jaden Stevenson, which is a coup. I think, given what they gave up, I think that was an excellent piece of recruiting. In terms of, they got him for a second round draft pick. They had to pick up his contract, which was substantial, but he's a guy that at his best can certainly win them games. And he's someone that Scott Clayton, really the head guy in the list management area at the club, rated very highly when he was in his draft year, and things, of course, went very awry at Collingwood.
You mentioned Jaden Stevenson. He came along with Aidan Corr and Will Phillips, who was picked up in the draft at pick 3. But they lost a couple of big names in Ben Brown and Sean Higgins. How do you see those outs affecting them?
Yeah, well, I think the thing is that the outs are going to affect them more than the ins, because they're getting younger players in. Aidan Corr will certainly help the defence, but Brown did kick, I think, more goals than any player over a 4-year period in the competition, including Josh Kennedy. Now, he's got limitations. He had a terrible year last year. The way footy's played has hurt him, but they'll certainly miss that focal point. And I think that Sean Higgins was in their best 3 or 4 players. I mean, he's getting on. They made a good decision in the sense that he's not going to be part of North's next premiership contending team, probably not even the next finals team. So they made the right call in letting him go. He got that offer from Geelong, but in the short term it will hurt, because they're 2 of their best players.
I guess those omissions mean that the likes of Jack Zeeble and Ben Cunnington, who had disappointing years last year for different reasons, they really need to stand up.
Yeah, and look, there's a lot of we'll get to this in a minute, but there's a lot of pressure on both of those players. Cunnington's had quite a few injury problems. He's the player, though, that typically I look at with Todd Goldstein as being the players you count on the most in terms of performance, provided their bodies hold up. And probably the other player, of course, is Robbie Tarrant, who's also had a lot of injuries. He is a very good player, and they look a much better side when he's down back and just holding down that fullback position.
At the other end of the ground, without Ben Brown, it's all eyes on Nick Larkey, a very young, inexperienced key forward. How do you think they kick enough goals this year to win games?
Well, they're going to have to get them from ground level players as well. They're going to have to players like Taron Thomas, and they don't have Higgins either. They're going to have to get mid-sized players, ground level players. Larkey's a good talent, but you're right, he's had Ben Brown with him. So they're going to have to manufacture scores, and with midfielders providing quite a lot of the score.
Well, there's a lot of young players on the Roos list that have fans excited, but who do you think the big improver will be this year?
Well, I'm going for Taron Thomas. When he first came into the comp a couple of years ago, he just looked like an electrifying player. Reminded me of some very talented Indigenous players of yesteryear, players like Michael O'Loughlin. He's got that level of ability. He's a smooth mover. I think he can light them up a bit. I think they just hope that he's given the opportunity to play without the pressure of having to be a star immediately. But I think he's the player that can make the step. Of course, the other one would be Luke Davies-Uniacke, but I think Thomas has got the higher ceiling.
A lot of pressure on the club this year. Is there one player in particular that you think will really be under the spotlight?
Yeah, Jack Zeeble, because he's in the twilight. He hasn't gone so well. He's had injuries, of course, but he's at a point where they're moving him to the half-back line. I'm not sure that's a position that suits him. Typically, half-back's an easier position for many players to play, but the next step is generally once you go back when you've been played forward quite a bit. He was a pretty good forward, and of course he was a good midfielder, albeit he's never been a high possession getter because he doesn't have that natural running base. I'd say he's under the pump quite a bit, bearing in mind that he's going to be the leader of a group, and he's going to have to front up after a lot of games where they're going to get done, and some games they're going to get done quite badly.
The Roos last year finished 17th with only 3 wins. What do you see in store from them this year?
I see them as bottom two. That might sound a bit harsh. I think there'll be improvement in terms of they're going to be fielding a very young side, and I can't see them making up much ground because they've lost experience and they've gained not much experience to make up for it. They'll surprise teams on their day because the competition is very even, and they may well be more settled than they were in the hub, where clearly there were some issues there last year. But I still see them in the bottom two.